Welcome along to coverage of the 2024 Wizz Air Milan Marathon. It's a beautiful day for marathon running, and in the foreground you can see the big difference in this year's race, an event that was inaugurated in the year 2000. The start and finish have been moved to be sited right in front of Il Duomo, the Piazza del Duomo, and that is it is the largest church in Italy. Fantastic landmark. So the race moves right to the heart of the city centre for the start and the finish, and we're expecting in excess of 8,000 individual marathon runners on what it looks to be perhaps the first day of summer after a pretty grim period of weather in Northern Europe. These are some of the landmarks that the runners will be taking in, a journey that heads broadly west to the furthest point and then the return run back to the city centre. So ancient and modern, some of the most famous landmarks in the world will be passed on foot by the runners, who now come from all countries of the world. 40% of the start list today will be from outside of Italy, and this is the route that they'll be taking. Not quite as quick as this graphic. We have La Scala as one of the early landmarks. That's the old start and finish at Porto Venezia, and then the route starts to make its way outside of the city centre as we approach the 19-kilometre point out to some of the newer suburbs. That's the oldest castle in Italy, the largest in Italy that will be passed there. It is a technical course. You can't see a full kilometre of running up ahead, but you can see the next 500 metres of running, so flat and fast. The height differential is between 135 metres above sea level to 118 metres above sea level, so only a 17-metre height drop across the whole course, so very, very fast. The prevailing wind, such as it is, will be out of the west, so the runners heading west at this point. And this is where they begin the return journey, the half marathon point, or rather that is the return journey completed. And here's some live scenes down at the start, those balloons indicating some of the pacing groups that will enable the runners to achieve their target times. There's a relay that's taking place, supported by Unicredit. 4,000 teams of 4 runners, each running irregular distances of between 6.5 kilometres and 13 kilometres. 104 not-for-profit organisations taking part in that, and they raised €5.5 million for charity. But what a beautiful finish and start line that is. There's 3,000 spires within the construction of the dome. It took 600 years to build. It was only actually finally completed in 1965, the last details. The time that these elite athletes will be keeping an eye out for, 2:08:10 is the Olympic qualifying time for men, and 2:26:50 is the Olympic qualifying time for Paris for the women. And those qualification, the period for qualification ends at the end of April, so this is the last chance. We've got runners from Australia, from Sweden, from South Africa. There is Italian interest as well in pursuing those qualifying marks. The times have got quicker and quicker. Those are the elite men. One of the most fascinating ones there, Hip 7, Özbilen. We saw him make his debut, former middle distance runner for Turkey. Debuted at the Abu Dhabi Marathon back in December with an excellent what was his time there? 2:10:16. So he needs less than 2 minutes to take off of that time on his second marathon for him to be likely to be selected for the Paris Olympic Games. That elite women's start, predominantly East African. They'll have a designated pacemaker looking to take them round in somewhere around 2:23 pace. You can see Sarah Klein has made the long journey from Australia in search of that qualification period. This is the peak month for spring marathons. We've got the Paris Marathon today, London and Boston take place in the next couple of weekends, but then the window closes on qualification for the Paris Olympic Games on the 30th of April. Good morning, wherever you're joining us. This is Jeff Whiteman with your coverage from Milan. the masses, lots of first-timers as well as the elites. So lots of races within a race. Nice to see a race start, at least from my perspective, without rain. We've had that relentlessly for the last 6 weeks or so, it seems. So these are the elites being introduced on the start line. Tigis Memuye of Ethiopia, a 2:24 runner. Those orange singlets behind her include a number of the pacing groups, PM 1 and 2 and 3, Pacemaker. 10 seeded runners in the elite women's race, including the competitors from Australia and Sweden. Number 1 seed we'll be meeting shortly is from Bahrain. Dariso Kuftu Tahir of Ethiopia has a lifetime best of 2:23.14. If she can reproduce that form, she won't be too far away from the women's course record. We had a sub 2:20 on the year when it was an elite-only mass race, elite-only race on a multi-lap course. Kipkoskai, number 10 seed, 2:07 marathon runner. Beata, the number 2 seed, just 23 years of age. And this is the defending champion. It's not actually ever been achieved in this event in Milan for a successful back-to-back defence of the title. Andrew Rotich Kwemoy has the honour of bib number 1 in the men's event. So those are the elite fields. We just had the top 3 names introduced in each case. There's the weather forecast, absolutely perfect for marathon running. Temperature now 14 degrees. It will rise by maybe a degree or 2 towards the middle of the day. Modest humidity and light winds, 0% chance of rain. So the conditions are set fair. We are all set for the 2024 Wizz Air Milan Marathon. Stand by. Those corrals of gathered runners on seeded predicted finishing time, gathering all the way back around the back of the church. 8,000 runners, 16,000 relay team runners, the culmination of a festival of running here in Milan. And this is the grand finale, the full marathon distance with the fastest in the world, many of them seeking Olympic qualifying marks. And that's the 1 minute countdown. So this is a little bit further back behind that elite corral. A lot more relaxed and casual there. I mentioned those balloons are the pacing groups that will go around at even pace for target times from 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. There'll be finishers right the way through the day back here. And this is a generation of super shoes. Those shoes are the reason why the Olympic qualifying mark is getting quicker and quicker, because the times are being absolutely obliterated from previous years. But the course records here are very notable from 3 years ago. They will take some beating. The way it works with chip timing is the athletes will have chips embedded in the backs of their numbers, which activate as they cross the start sensor pads and deactivate at the finish. That gives everybody a net finishing time, regardless of how long it took to cross the start line. The chips begin as you cross the start line. Looks like we're ready. So the flutter petty out of the top of the gantry heralds the starts. Pours onto the heads of those behind, and it's a fairly immediate right-hand turn. There's been a lot of work gone in over the months leading up to this race between the Milan city authorities and the safety bodies and RCS Sports, who are the organisers of this event, just to establish how the logistics of this start and the assembly and the dispersal of the runners at the finish would work around what are relatively narrow urban streets here. Fantastic shots from the drone overhead. You see that looks like the entire men's elite field, which has potentially 38 runners in it, has already separated itself from the elite women in the opening 60 seconds of the race. They'll be crossing the start line for up to 20 minutes, I would think, possibly more, for 8,000 runners to clear. We're in the era of the selfie. Great way to see Milan on foot, because every landmark you could imagine, ancient and modern, will be encompassed by this course. Target time for the elite men is around about 62:40 pace for the leaders to the halfway point, so just around, well, it would be a course record if they could maintain that speed, or very close to. Second wave getting their start countdown, and they're underway as well. Wave starts will continue, and the third corral of athletes will be walked forward very shortly. But all of these runners will have raced with chip timing previously, and they'll know that that doesn't start until they go under the gantry, so it doesn't matter in these warm conditions how long you have to wait. PM5 in the centre of the shot is John Wangi Muchiri. They just have to be a little bit careful. This is a cobbled section, just to have their wits about them and not put a foot on the tram lines there. That will have been part of the risk assessment. It's often a particular challenge for wheelchair racers around the world, where ancient modern cities have tram lines going right the way through the centre. And there's a secondary group that's already starting to form at the back of these elite men. They'll be aiming for somewhere around 63:45, 63:50 at halfway, and you can be sure that is with the Olympic qualifying mark of 2:08:10 as a final time in mind. Elite runners only have potentially 2 marathons a year that they can take in, usually in the spring and in the autumn. This used to be an autumn event. It was moved to the spring in 2009. But this is the last chance for those that want to be selected by their national teams to put down a qualifying marker as we go through the Via Senato, one of our early landmarks on the course. The Kenyan marathon team for men and women is the same as every other national team. 3 to run in Paris, but it's got to be one of the hardest teams in the world to make. Harder perhaps than All Blacks rugby, or AC Milan in the football, or the Lakers at basketball. How on earth, when Kenya has the 3/4 of the top 100 times ever recorded, and each year, do you pick the top 3? Well, what they've done is they had a long list of 10 athletes that were named in the men and women for Kenya before Christmas, and this week that was brought down to 6. So it's a short list of 6 Kenyan men and women, including the defending Olympic champion Eliud Kipchoge, and I guess next month in May that will be finalised down to 3 with the Olympic marathon in early August. PM2 on the right hand side of the shot there is Gideon Kangwoni Chekonga. A little bit of a wall of runners, but there's no wind that needs to be broken up. It's a very still day. Tuitok is the first athlete you can see, with just to the left slightly there, with bib number 3 making his debut. There are 5 men in that leading men's group who are making their full marathon debuts. All of them have outstanding half marathon times, so you can be sure that they'll be running smoothly and in familiar territory over the first hour of the race. It's when you get into the third and fourth quarter that things start to get a little bit no man's land for those making their full marathon debuts. I guess that applies all the way down the field as well, not just to elites. Right hand side of the shot, hip number 14, Tolosa, another of the debutants, Ethiopian athlete. Throughout the race, we will give the unfolding story in both the elite men and the elite women. You can see the men have already split into two packs. That's those going for the 62:40 halfway time and those going for the 63:40 halfway time. Women going for around about 71 minutes or just under as their target time for halfway. If you are watching somebody that you know further back in the field, we may see them. There'll be different points when we pick up runners from further back in the field, and it is 40% of the field come from outside of Italy. The largest national groupings are France, United Kingdom, Belgium, Ireland and Germany in that order. Good luck to your athlete if you're from one of those groupings or one of the foreign athletes running in Milan today. First look at the women's pacing group. It's just the one pacemaker there. That's Isaac Kemai, PMW on his front. And the athlete tracking him very closely, Shugi. The red back bib is Fantu Shugi Galata of Ethiopia, 2:29:20 marathon runner. But it looks as though there are, just counting them, six elite women, all East Africans, who've gone with that opening pace. A little bit further back, we've got Sarah Klein of Australia, best of 2:30, looking for her Olympic qualifier, and Hannah Lindholm of Sweden with a best of 2:28:59. We have seen races where pacemakers have stayed in after the halfway point to go on and win the race. It's a rare thing, but we've seen it twice with the Abu Dhabi Marathon, where a pacemaker in the men's race continues in the race and wins it. As long as they fulfill their obligations on speed and distance to at least halfway, I think it's then fair game for anybody beyond that point. PM1, Degu Sehe of Ethiopia. So it's a mixed group of athletes. They've all got that Rosa Associates Italian management company singlet on, but there are a mixture of Ethiopian and Kenyan men in that leading group. You can see the pacemakers, lots of hand signals, lots of looking around, lots of making sure to see that the athletes are with them and are comfortable, whereas those that are going the full distance just need to let the miles click by. And that's the second group, just 5 or 6 seconds behind when we looked. Franz of South Africa is the athlete with bib number 8 on his back. He's one of those that will be looking for that 2:08:10 time. An experienced competitor, 2:09:24, so he needs to take over a minute off his best time as they go through 3 kilometers, just outside 9 minutes. So a nice solid opener. They'll be hoping for even splits all the way. You can see when I mentioned on the course, you can't really say it's too technical. It looks on the graphic like there's lots of twists and turns, but actually nobody wants to see the next 5 kilometers that they're going to be running in a straight line up ahead, but you maybe want to see the next 500 meters or so. This is the old start and finish, one of the historical gates to Milan. Porta Venezia is where we started and finished for years up until last year. You see some nice wide boulevards and some space and a park adjacent. But the race this year, for the first time, moving to the Dome for its start and finish. The largest and most famous of all those landmarks in the centre of Milan. Back with the women, Segui of Segui is the athlete right on the leader's shoulder, just taking a glimpse left and right. And if she looks, she'll see it's not quite a single file behind her, slightly more densely packed with their leading group, including those 5 pacemakers. Kipchumba, the number 15 seed, 2:08.11 is his best time. So still very, very early days in the unfolding of this race. It's all about energy conservation. When they get a drink station, there'll be the opportunity just to keep the fluids topped up, to get on board some carbohydrates, some electrolytes to replace those lost in sweating. But we sometimes see when they've spent the day before the race lavishly preparing their own personal drinks, that there's an obsession, especially in the women's, it always seems to me, to grab that bottle, even if it means diving to one side or going back in some cases. But there is water and regular electrolyte and energy drinks available at other stations around the course. So it's not an especially hot day. The temperature won't rise above the low 20s at any point. Humidity around 60%, so really ideal conditions, and no need to panic on the energy release process. 19 kilometres of this opening section of the race will be run within the city centre as they go through 4 kilometres, just under 12 minutes, so a quick previous 1 kilometre segment for the leading group, and then to 20 kilometres and beyond as the second group go across the Piazza della Repubblica. They'll be out on the outskirts, the suburbs of Milan, the more rural areas, the newer areas. So these men have their own target time. We're getting a bird's eye view over their shoulder. It's the leading group of men up ahead, the chasing group. These are targeting under 64 minutes at halfway, and that's specifically with the Olympic qualifying mark of 2:08.10 as a target finishing time. So even pace is the way to do it if possible, and that's what the pacemaker's job is. Those super shoes have just absolutely revolutionized road running and to an extent track times over the last 5 or 6 years. There are carbon fibre plates in there. There is deep memory foam. The regulations allow a heel stack at the back of the shoe of up to 40 millimeters. It gives tremendous energy return, less fatigue, and the times consequently for all runners, not just the elites, have come down and down. There was a big discussion this week about London Marathon and its good for age guaranteed places. If you're any age up until over 70, there's a target time that you can achieve that gets you a guaranteed place in the following year's London Marathon. Well, those times have come down by 5 minutes, and race director Hugh Brasher was saying, well, it's because of the shoes. The shoes are getting everybody, citizen runners and elites, 5 minutes or more quicker over the marathon distance, and our qualifying times need now to reflect that, and the Olympic time has come down as well. They would like a race of between 60 and 120 runners in Paris in both the men's and the women's. So 2:08.10 and 2:26.50 are those current times, which are significantly quicker than they were in Tokyo. 13 there is another of our South African runners. That's Vicky Desmond Makagobo. Coming into the prime season for the major South African ultra marathons, the Comrades Marathon, the Two Oceans Marathon, the first of those in June. For years, South Africa was probably underachieving at international level because its athletes were tempted by those classic ultra events rather than the conventional marathon distance. But there's 2 South Africans, so we're projecting 2:05.19 on the graphic there as the likely finishing time if this race stays at the pace which it's gone out for the first 15 minutes. through 5 kilometers, 14:51. So they're all chugging along nicely. Nobody looking in too much distress. Those that have only run half marathons will be wondering what the fuss is about. They'll find out, won't they? And this is back with the chasing group. Number 6 with his back to us there is Mengistu of Ethiopia. 212 man. He's operating well inside that at the moment. So we move out towards more residential parts of the city. This is the scene at the head of the men's race. A few spectators out bright and early to support the runners, but they're still heading predominantly west overall at the moment to the furthest point of the course. There's very little wind, but if there is, it's a slight headwind at the moment, so that will be the pacemakers' jobs to just form a little bit of a barricade at the front of the field. That's why they're running shoulder to shoulder, to just break any headwinds that there might be. The gap to that secondary group has opened up now to about 12 or 15 seconds. That's entirely expected. They have different aspirations. Somewhere in this group will be our men's champion, and somewhere in that second group there may be 1 or 2 Olympic qualifiers for their national teams. And it is such a hard standard that if they achieve it, there's every chance for European nations that they will get selected, because there won't necessarily be 3 people who've run under 2:08:10 for the men. That elite women's race looks like it's just starting to fragment a little bit. Those gaps aren't as tightly clustered as we've seen in the men's race. So they're really pushing on in that women's race, and they're starting to hurt. It's a field of 10 elite women, but it looked to me like it was down to 4 or 5, and a few gaps opening up there. We'll keep an eye on that. First drink station. Those are the drinks bottles that they've prepared. Taking that on board. It's not directly a function of sweating. Once you start to sweat, you're already behind the curve in terms of your hydration. So it's precautionary measures, taking on fluids in anticipation of the workload coming up and the carbohydrates that are going to be expended. "18 minutes into the race, still about an hour and 3/4 to go." Just looking at the style, all of them running pretty freely, as so they should. Smooth, even surface out of this part of the course. And there's one of our live bands to just pep them along. The military plays "The Eye of the Tiger," the theme from Rocky. 40 there, the right-hand side pacemaker, Segui of Ethiopia. Don't know how they necessarily communicate with each other when one's native tongue is Swahili and the other's is Amharic. I guess it's in English. I guess they don't have to say too much. Is speed up, slow down. Do you want a drink? Osbilen, there he is at the back. Fascinating character, the Turk, former Kenyan. He's had a long and very distinguished career at 1500 meters on the track. And he had an amazing debut at the full marathon in Abu Dhabi in December for 2:10:16. There's no doubt he will want that Olympic qualifying mark for Turkey. But almost all of his personal bests, he got a personal best for 800 meters. Gold medal in the Mediterranean Games. So he skipped out the 5 and 10,000 meters, maybe the half marathon as well. There he is in the orange singlet, just riding at the back of that group. Ilham Tanui Osbilen. Now just turned 34 years of age, and he will hope to ride his luck in the event as well as he did in Abu Dhabi, where he finished I think he was very high overall in the, he was third in the Abu Dhabi Marathon on his debut. So a very good first taste of the full marathon distance. And he's running pretty wisely here, just cruising at the back of that group, not getting too stressed about any pace changes, just letting the kilometres unfold. 10 closest to us is Titus Kimutai Kosgei of Kenya, 2:07 man. And that's about the speed that they're running at the moment, so should be a familiar and comfortable pace to him. It is 7 kilometres that they're just about to pass through. Ethiopian Beata is number 2. You can see the number 1 and number 2 seeds, stride for stride. That is Kenya and Ethiopia, Dibaba and Kwemoy. Back in the women's race, she's been right on this from the very beginning. The athlete that we're looking at is Shugi on her singlet, Galata Fantu Shugi, and just behind her Tahir, Dadiso Kuftu Tahir of Ethiopia, 2:23 runner. That slightly higher arm action that the Kenyan women have. Are we down to these two? It looks like we could be. So this is a very, very, very early run for home. If these two are away, we're only getting the benefit of the two of them. 2 Ethiopians. I wonder if they planned that or are just following the pacemaker, and it's the pacemaker that is drawing them clear. They're scheduled to go through in about 2:23 pace. There's the caption showing the nationalities: Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda and Turkey in that leading group of 9, plus the pacemakers who are Kenyan and Ethiopian. So moving out into some of the leafier suburbs on the journey west, the halfway split will be just under 63 minutes if they maintain this momentum. There's lead bikes and the lead car. All of the runners will have started their own watches just as a precaution, but there are fixed clocks around the course, and there's also a clock you can see with the red numerals on the back of that lead vehicle. So a few turns. We've had 2, a left and a right in the last couple of 100 metres, but nothing too severe. The race sponsored this year by Wizz Air, reflecting the importance of Milan as a hub for their low-cost carrying. I think every competitor in the marathon got a €20 voucher towards a Wizz Air flight. I actually flew with Wizz Air to Marrakesh and back for not much more than that each way. Forsesco Castle is one of the symbols of Milan that they're just passing there on the left-hand side. I think it's the largest castle in Italy, one of the largest in Europe. And that, I think, was the 5-mile split, so there will be imperial distances recorded as well as the metric distances on this nice left-hand sweep around the front of the castle. 15th century, home of the Duke of Milan originally. One of the symbols, one of the iconic landmarks that they'll pass. As well as this cluster of spectators, a few French flags there. They are the largest of the overseas contingents that comprise 40% of this field. It is possible, if you know where you're going, to pop up in 3 or 4 different places to see runners at the front of the field and also a little bit further round as well. So the pacemaker's job, or the 5 of them, their jobs are almost halfway done. We're coming up shortly in the next 3 or 4 minutes to a quarter of the way through the course, 42.2 kilometers. So 10 kilometers, which is coming up, will be a notable split. There we are through 38 on that left-hand side sideboard. And this is the chasing group. So dropping a little bit further back as they approach the castle. There's the name check. 3 South Africans running together there. And this will be engineered for a 2:08.10 finish. It will be anxious times on the return run for them. Well, we have got 2 women away and clear in the elite field. I'm looking back there at the chasers, but that's a big gap of 25 minutes for Tahir and Segui, the 2 Ethiopians. Just the 1 pacemaker servicing them. That's Isaac Kemai, looking very relaxed, checking on his watch. That can sometimes be a little reflex reaction. The other jobs that the pacemakers, depending on how experienced they are, do are to indicate when there's a turn coming up, so they'll drop a hand left or right. I think he's suggesting they slow it down a little bit. I don't know if he's that universal flat palmed signal was to say ease it up, but he's the pacemaker. They can also indicate when there are drink stations coming up. They can't grab the drinks for the athletes. They have to do that themselves. It would be rendered assistance and a disqualification if they did. Still a big pack. If we take out the 5 pacemakers, there's still, I think, 8 athletes in there going the full distance. PM1, the primary pacemaker, Abene Degu Sehe of Ethiopia. Kipkosgei at the back is a 2:07 man. In any marathon, you go through good and bad patches, whatever standard you are. There can be little things that just set them off, maybe taking on board fluids and they don't sit well on your stomach, or getting a stitch or a blister, or just something that unsettles the rhythm. But everything's a phase, good and bad. Even the world records involve some better kilometers than others. So you've just got to roll with the punches on a marathon race day. Expect things to go overall to plan, but within that there can be good and bad kilometers. Now this is fascinating in the women's, because an elite field of 10 is already down to 2. Segui seems to be the one who is just within tapping distance always of the pacemaker. He's Kenyan. Those 2 are Ethiopian, so there's probably no verbal exchanges going on. Still doing those flat palm gestures. I don't know if that's calm down or slow down, but they'll follow him. If he quickens, they'll quicken. If he eases back, then they're obliged to do the same. It's a long way to go on their own, with almost 2 hours of running still to come in the women's race. Great shots from the lead camera bike here alongside the runners. It should be fairly minimalist, the runners' action. You can see their arms don't punch or sway as much as track runners, and minimal backlift as well. That's where we are on the course, the live position, with the right hand turn coming up next. Welcome along. If you're just joining us, this is Jeff Whiteman with your coverage of the 2024 Wizz Air Milan Marathon. Beautiful racing conditions. All of the leading contenders still in place as we look from behind at that leading men's group. But the news in the women's, which we're catching up with alternately, is that we have 2 Ethiopians clear at the moment. Tahir and Segui. One of them has run 2:23. And the other is a 2:29 runner. So Segui at the moment having the race of her life. But it's early. We're just coming up to the 30-minute point. The men's 10-kilometer intermediate split will give us an indication of whether they are on schedule. There it is, right on the turn. So under 30 minutes. So running at just under 2:06, well, just outside 2:06 on the graphic as the predicted finishing time. So top quality running. The course records for the elites were set both in the year when it was a multi-lap race around the park, just a couple of hundred athletes invited in 2021. So Ruben Kipyego ran 2:03.55 and Hiwot Gebrekiden of Ethiopia in the women's ran 2:19.35. Those times not under threat today. That was a one-off year on a multi-lap small field race. Second group going through, well, we can see they're about 50 seconds behind, but still going well and still projecting for their 2:08.10 potential Olympic qualifying time, with 3 from South Africa in that group. The graphic just doesn't show the pacemakers, it shows the athletes going the full distance within there. About halfway through the pacemakers' duties now. 21 kilometers is the halfway split where we're likely to see some of them peel off. Nice cobbled section through the town here. Looked like almost all of them took on board fluids when they were offered them there. This is Özbilen, the former 1500 meter star for Turkey, and it looks like he's drifting back a little bit there. Well, that was an interesting drink station and cobbled section there, because it looks like it has fragmented that leading group. And I don't see the top 2 seeds there, Kwemoy and Batea of Ethiopia. So it looks potentially as if we've had a quick kilometre here. The drink stations can disrupt rhythm, but that surge is the first that we've seen in the race, and it has reduced what was a group of 10 going the full distance down to what looks to be 4 or 5. The women now coming up to their 10-kilometre split. It will be at that right-hand turn, right on the corner. In the orange singlet, it is Galata Fantushugi of Ethiopia, and just behind her, fellow Ethiopian Dediso Kuftu Tahir. The Ethiopian names aren't as conventionally first name, middle name and surname in the way that Western names can be. So they're a little bit more interchangeable as names. .6024 isn't part of the pacing endeavour. He's looking at his watch, but he has a bib number from the masses. Obviously decided that this is going to be his role in the race with the elite women. I shouldn't think they'll mind, as long as he runs a nice even pace and doesn't get in the way at drink stations. So 10 kilometres there, reaching 33.27, and that is just about 2:21 pace. I'm anticipating the graphic, but that's my calculation. 2:21.13, so fantastic running. This is miles inside the Olympic qualifying standard for women, but of course that Ethiopian women's team, very, very, very hard to make. I mean, you'd have to run a time of around about 2:19 or thereabouts at this point in proceedings, as that male pacemaker starts to find things a little bit heavy going, or the citizen runner that was helping out. So drink station coming up, maybe he just got out of the way to enable them to do that. Fair play. And this is the UniCredit Marathon Relay, huge part of the festival of running here at the Milan Marathon. It's the 23rd edition. It was first held in 2000, no race during the pandemic. There are 4,000 teams, 4 runners per team, and they run uneven distances in sequence. 6.5 kilometers is the shortest, 13 kilometers is the longest, and it's a special charity endeavor. There are 104 not-for-profit organizations fielding teams here, and the amount raised for charity, I was surprised to read, is the second largest behind any marathon, behind the London Marathon, which I think raises about 40 or 50 million a year. 5.5 million euros raised for charities by the event that we're looking at now on the split screen. They'll cover the same course. There will just be takeover zones where the next runners will be waiting. And the reason they're odd distances are that they have to be pretty large areas to accommodate 4,000 runners waiting to change over. So lots of smiles and waves on the faces of those about to get underway with their marathon adventure. And on the left-hand side of the shot, we're looking at an absolute storming runaway here in the women's event. An elite field of 10, which we might have expected to still be together at this point in the race, is down to 2 competitors. Have they gone too soon? Or are we looking at our new champion? There's the gap back to the nearest chaser, Memuye, 23 seconds back down the road. And there is only the one designated pacemaker, the one that we're looking at now, Isaac Kemai, PMW, pacemaker women. So there'll be no assistance from the men further back for those that are chasing, and that is a significant gap at this point in the race. Hand signals from the pacer just indicating the change of direction coming up. He's doing a good job. So I have a list of 38 historic landmarks. Well, some of them not so historic, some are part of the new architectural landscape of Milan, but 32 famous sites that the runners will pass. So if you're a runner that likes to get around the world, it's a great way to see Milan on foot, because pretty much everything is covered on this new route, starting and finishing at the Dome, the #1 landmark in the centre of Milan. These women won't be too concerned about the history that they're passing. They'll be looking more to make history. Could be the win of a lifetime for one of these two in the women's race. The men, that group reforming. The lower the digit, the higher the expectation of winning. And that's why one on the right-hand side, as we look at him, the defending champion, Andrew Rotic Kwemoy, the winner here a year ago in 2:07:14, but also a winner at the half marathon distance in Lille, in The Hague, in Padua, and he was also 21st in the World Half Marathon Championships in Latvia back in October. So some great racing pedigree at the half marathon and marathon distance. It's never been achieved before, a successful defence of a Milan Marathon title. We did have Titus Ikiru first across the line 2 years in a row, but he was disqualified for a doping offence for his second running here in Milan, and also his course record withdrawn. Back of that group, #8, is Frans of South Africa. So there are 3 South African men in the chasing group. He's the best of them, with bib #8 closest to us, and he will be particularly homing in on that Olympic qualifying mark of 2:08:10. His lifetime best is 2:09:24, so he's got to take a chunk off that. But at the moment, if he can hold things together and ride for longer with this group, he's very much on schedule for that. Crisp sunlight, nice shadows on the ground. Not too hot. It will barely exceed 20 degrees, even when some of the mid-packers are crossing the finish line towards the middle of the day. That's where we are on the graphic. We're heading west. There is a modest breeze, but it's nothing. No. Makers 62:40 is the target halfway time, and I should think they are exactly on that for this leading group. And a bit further back down the road, 63:45 for those chasing much closer the Olympic qualifying mark. Good crowds out here in this residential part of the city. Four, with his back to us, is another of the Ethiopians. Best of 2:06.55 for Akalnu of Ethiopia in that pinkish coloured singlet. And alongside him, the taller figure with number 15, Raymond Kipchumba. With a right-hand turn coming up. Sometimes male pacemakers not only go the full distance, but they can take the athletes to the 3/4 mark, and that will be welcome because it takes away the thinking. If the pacemakers are doing all the worrying about is it too fast, is it too slow, is there a turn coming up, are there drink stations, the runners can just concentrate on fixing their gaze on the singlet in front, and the pacemakers do all the thinking, all the worrying. So as long as they're running a nice even schedule, the longer they stay in there, the better it is for those chasing. Tahir and Segui still in that same formation. Segui's decided the pacemaker is hers. She is absolutely running in his footsteps, sometimes a little bit close, but just not too close so she's getting clipped with his back lift. And Tahir just staying behind her left shoulder for most of the way. These two men with the white caps, I think, are mass race runners who've decided to join in and will be running a decent time themselves. Let's not knock it. If this is on at 2:23 pace, these are good standard male runners. So at this point on the landscape, we get some more modern buildings, some more residential buildings, some more leisure-based buildings, restaurants, cafeterias. City life is one of the newest that we'll see when they get near the halfway point. But it is a beautiful city, Milan, the world capital of fashion, noted for its style. And this is a cool way to see these famous sites. Just checking the bibs. Don't think we've had any major casualties. I'm looking back for Osbilen, the 1500 metre runner. I think he may be drifting back. Can't see him in that group. Doesn't mean that he's not going to run 2:08.10 because the second group. Oh, there he is. There's Osbilen. So he's hanging in there, sweating a bit. You can see both sets of teeth at the back of the group, but he's still there. A man who's accomplished great things. Silver medalist at the World Indoors at 1500 metres way back in Istanbul in 2012. Took up Turkish citizenship, former William Tanui, now Ilham Tanui Osbilen. And an amazing first-time experience at the marathon in Abu Dhabi in December, which you may have seen on our live stream, another RCS sports event. So he's going well. They are all still there. I'm pleased to see it. I'll tell you what, you wouldn't want to have him alongside you if it comes down to a sprint finish. One of the few men with an 800 metre world-class personal best in marathon terms. A couple of the pacemakers up front there, quite notably toe striking, the forefoot of their foot touching the ground first. Most marathon runners strike with their heel. The effect of the 40mm stack on the new super shoes means that most people are a little bit more mid-foot striking, but a couple of the pacemakers quite toey up the front there. 7 is Osbilen, 10 is Kipkoskei. One or two of these will have trained together. Here's the 15-kilometer split coming up. That will give us another indication of what the likely finishing time is coming up. First of the pacemakers steps off. That's his job done. That's Segui. And we're still on 2:07 pace, so that is well inside Olympic qualifying time for the likes of Osbilen. Chaos, as always, at the drink stations. People cutting each other up, obsessed with their own drinks bottles. You can see there's huge numbers of regulation drinks, but runners tend to be fixated on getting their own particular blend of carbohydrates that they've prepared. So 2:07, if it can be maintained, and the final quarter of the race on the overall pace of this race, if it can be maintained, will be a personal best for a number of these runners. Now, Osbilen and Kipkoskei have got detached again at that drink station. We saw that before. They reconnect fairly quickly, but it is definitely a disruptor. Here's the second group. I may have got this group mixed up with the first one when I was taking a roll call at the previous 10K checkpoint. They're all still intact. There's 3 South Africans in there, a minute and a quarter behind the lead group, and that's fine because 2:08.10, there may be within 5 or 10 seconds of it. Oh, going back for drinks. I'm not sure. There almost ought to be something in the technical meeting about do not obsess about your drink. If you miss it, there'll be another one available. There is regular water, regular carbohydrate drinks. Do not go backwards to get your drink. So yeah, it's pretty close to that Olympic qualifying pace now. If they really are a minute and a quarter behind, and the graphic confirms that they are, that is 5 seconds outside Olympic qualifying pace. Somebody within that group will do the math, and they may find that group fragments a little bit more as one or two of them commit to the Olympic time at the halfway point. There's the 3, is it 4 South Africans in fact in that chasing group, so almost like they're national Olympic trials there. And there is 1 South African in this leading group. That is Fihi Desmond Mokobo. Number 13 on his back, if you can spot him. This is City Life, famous group of architects that have constructed this whole neighbourhood. The route will wend its way through the park from 16 kilometres. It forms part of the return run as well, and it's residential. There are offices and commercial premises here, but also a bit of an entertainment district, restaurants, theatres, cinemas. So this is part of modern Milan, and that is 10 miles, the right-hand board indicator. So those of you that still get your dolly mixtures by the quarter pound, 10 miles in 48:20, so clipping along very nicely. We've only lost 1 pacemaker. The rest are likely to stay in for the next 10 or 12 minutes or so through City Life. I don't think I've seen Osbilen, number 7 there, anything other than last place. That's fine. The race is over 42.2 kilometres. It could be Shrewd, but he looks like he has to work a little bit to re-engage after those gaps open up at the drink stations. It's always him that's at the back, but the further into the race it goes, the more his pace could become an issue. What a story it would be if he could win it, but I think as a Turkish athlete he would be happy enough to move his lifetime best on from 2:09 to 2:08 and maybe have an appointment with Paris on what could be a very difficult Olympic marathon course, very hilly course that has been unveiled as the Olympic marathon course. It goes out to Versailles. I think historically it runs the route taken by some female suffragettes 100 years ago. Chasing group goes through 10 miles. The predominantly South African group. 6 there on the right is Mengisti of Ethiopia, 2:12 runner. And Menghisti's going the full distance, so he's operating 4 minutes inside. Here he is on the right-hand side, closest to us. 4 minutes inside his lifetime best at the moment. If he keeps this going, fair play to him. And a strong sense of deja vu every time we see this women's breakaway duo. Still on 2:21 pace, so still some fantastic pacemaking being done by the female pacemaker Isaac Kemai of Kenya. He makes sure he gets his drink as well, stutters into the table to get it, which means that Segui correction, is out on her own. And she's got away here. As so often, the drink station opens up a gap. Now, she could exploit this if she wants to, because she's had very, very close company from Tahir for the whole race. And that is the biggest gap we've seen. It's got the two men in the caps in between them. And she's on her own and stranded at the back of that group. This is crunch time for the second of the Ethiopian women. Segui is a 2:29 runner, her best of 2:29.20. At the moment, she's running 6 minutes inside that, so it's bold. She is absolutely committed to it. And have we just seen a breakaway for her? She's never won a marathon. She was runner-up in Lisbon, 8th in Mumbai, never won a half marathon of any note. So this is a step into the unknown for the lead women. Meanwhile, back with the lead men. The Levissima family run is part of the festival, all-inclusive. This is for the younger athletes, well, family groups. So children, you can have 3 generations, parents and grandparents, to take part in this. It's been 3 or 4 days of activity centered around the full marathon distance, but a lot going on. So on the left-hand side, we're looking at the men rapidly closing in on the halfway point in the full marathon, and the Levissima family run getting underway on the right-hand side of the shot. What do we call those t-shirts? Teal? Is that teal or green? Green. Decathlon, one of the supporters of that event. Wizz Air, the title sponsors of the full marathon for the first time. You can see the old mouths are agape a little bit. They're working hard, sweat across the shoulders. This is a very slight uphill section. There's really no inclines to speak of. This is about it in terms of hills, but they're working there. Only 17 meters between the highest point on the course and the lowest point, and you can see that was probably 17 meters right there that they've just come up, but everybody took it in style. About 10 minutes to the halfway point. Titus Kipkoskei in the red and black singlet there. Third in the Vienna Marathon, the winner of the Buriram Marathon in Thailand. He's run plenty of finishing times between 2:7 and 2:8, which is handy because that's exactly the speed they're going at the moment. Looks as though we've got re-engagement from the lead 2 female Ethiopians. Just a bit of a wobbly section for Tahir, the athlete in the pink and black singlet, back there, but as they go through 10 miles, with 16 miles to run, there's only a second between these 2 leading women. But Segui is not giving up the pole position, not at any point since the gun went. So the city life area, this relatively new quarter of Milan, will be where they run for the next few kilometers. You can see spectacular modernistic architecture, a lot of corporate headquarters for the finance industry out on this part of the course as well. It's essentially a big sweep around city life. Tahir is running close to her personal best. That's the athlete in second. Segui at the moment is running 6 minutes inside. the fastest marathon she's ever run previously. So must have been very happy with her build-up and the training form and trusting in the pacemaker. It is possible for the male pacemakers in a female marathon to go almost all the way to the finish line. They just step off in the closing stages. That's what she'll be hoping that this particular pacemaker, Kemai, will do for her. When we last looked at the gap in the women's race, it was around about 30 or 40 seconds back to the chasing group. The men, a couple of minutes now to the 1 hour point. Kemai, the defending champion, still in there and going well. They're all going well. South Africa, Ethiopia, Turkey and Kenya. Beata looking pretty good on the left-hand side of the shot. The number 2 seed on his debut. Big wins over the half marathon distance in Lisbon, Buenos Aires, Yangzhou. There's 3 continents for you for his half marathon wins. And 4th in the Ras Al Khaimah half marathon early this year, 59:38. So he's gone under an hour for the half marathon more than once. At the moment, the pace won't be starting to bite on him on his debut. He'll be thinking this is comfortable, but it's all about that return run as they come out onto this major carriageway section into the bright sunshine. The athlete we're looking at there is one of the pacemakers. Looks like his race is run. That's John Wangi Muchiri. He'll wait for transportation to take him back. In fact, he steps off now. So I think we're down to 3 pacemakers as we approach the halfway point on that hairpin turn. One, it could be PM2. That is Gideon Kangwoni Chepkonga. So the responsibility with him is that can't see any other pacemaker bibs. So we're not quite to halfway, and that pacing group of 5 is now down to just him. He's working pretty hard, looking at his watch. Not sure he'll be able to take it much beyond the halfway point. And then there are decisions to be made by those going the full distance. Do they just try and keep going at the pace that the pacemakers have set? Or is that the opportunity, if they're feeling good, to push on, to put in a testing kilometre and see if it drops 1 or 2 of the other athletes? Women on the downslope of that underpass. We know there's the steeper incline coming up. Is this going to add to that gap, which has just opened up a little bit between the 2 Ethiopian women? Still only a couple of seconds. Pacemaker working hard up it. That's the slope in the race. Well, 3 seconds maybe. That could be another decisive little surge, because she will have to work hard to close that again. Tahir slots in behind the 2 males further back, but that gap is now 3 or 4 seconds again. Coming up to 1 hour in both races. Tahir was 4th in the marathon of Ljubljana in Slovenia. She won the Barcelona Marathon. She won the Lisbon Marathon. We're looking at her now. There are those credentials. Going back a bit, 2019. She looks very fluid, but you can see the mouth wide open. I'm sure if she could close this gap, she would. She seems to have been dropped by those 2 male pacemakers as well. So this is a difficult section of the race for Tahir. Kuftutahir Dadiso of Ethiopia. She's run under 225 4 or 5 times, but we saw coming out of that underpass, she just couldn't match the pace of this athlete. Segui never won a marathon, never broken 229, and she's on schedule to do both at the moment, but a long way to go. She may have overcooked it. 6 minutes inside her personal best is a risk. "31 years old. It's already run one marathon this year, and it wasn't particularly successful. It won't have been the quickest course in Lagos in Nigeria, where she ran 2:43 for 6th place. This is where we are, just going around the Hippodrome race course with the men coming up to the halfway point. Once again, big shuffling of the pack. Well, the pacemaker's taken his drink, which means that he may be in there for a few more kilometres. I don't think you take a drink if you're about to step off. Is that him smiling as well? Having a good section that he's enjoying, I think, the support of those volunteers at the drink station. Osbilen is still there on the very left-hand side of the shot, and he's moved up slightly. Gets himself credit for being in 7th place in the group, whereas every previous shot we've seen of him, he's been loitering with intent at the back of the group, right at the back of the group, moving up. And the one that appears to be in a bit of difficulty could be Kip Koskai at the back of that group in the red and black. Vitaya looks like the Iceman. A little bit of perspiration on the tall runner, the Ethiopian there. And Tuitok, also the tall Kenyan figure on his debut there, left-hand side of your screen. So he'll have raced this far in the past because we're coming out to the half marathon distance. Every metre beyond this is a step into the unknown, and we still have, I think, 3, possibly 4 marathon debutants in that group. So unfamiliar racing ground coming up. The body can do strange things to you with cramp and stiffness and fatigue levels. Hitting the wall where the body runs out of glycogen is the thing that marathon runners of all standards dread. So I think the halfway balloon arch is within the next minute or so. The mathematics pretty easy from that. They were on a low 2:07 schedule. This is 21 kilometres. That's not quite halfway. 21.1 there. Just a little bit further on is the balloon arch. Looks as though it's slowed very slightly to closer to a 2:08 schedule. That may be because we've only got one pacemaker left, but the predominant direction of the course now is to the east. So any light breeze that they may have been running into previously is now going to be behind them. 2:07.26, so still pretty quick. Good work being done. Pacing team of 5 down to 1. He took a drink at the last station, so we assume he's going to be here for a few more minutes. The relay teams go to the left for their changeover at the park here, and the full marathon distance is swinging right. Kwemoy, the lone Ugandan, the defending champion. The chip timing giving splits of 1 second, but effectively that is that whole group. Kip Koskai has managed to re-engage. So we haven't lost too many other than pacemakers in this group over the last 5 kilometre segment. Crucial section coming up will be when the pacemaker decides he's had enough. In the meantime, they move to rather more of a single file behind him. Those orange singlets, they're all part of the same management company. Rosa Associati has recruited the pacemaking team in both the men's and the women's, and also a number of the athletes, so they're the ones in the orange singlets. And that's pretty good pacemaking. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner, 3:01 to 3:03 every single kilometre after an opening 2:58. Maybe just a little bit of adrenaline early on, but they've done a wonderful, even pacing job, because conservation of energy and economy is the name of the game in marathon running. You don't do anything suddenly or dramatically in the way that you might do on the track. It's all with minimum energy expenditure, especially at this point in the race where we're just barely through the halfway point. So that's a leader's eye view of what's up ahead, the pacing car, the cycle outriders, the motorcycle camera bikes. The race doesn't duplicate itself. It comes back to the same finishing point, but on a slightly different sweep around the city. There'll be one or two landmarks where they'll be coming down the opposite side than they did on the outward journey. So 22 kilometres completed, 20 kilometres to run. I don't think there'll be a move made by any of the debutantes. It will be one of those that's experienced. The group will need to be whittled down a little bit. That will happen naturally when the pacemaker steps off. Özbilen, right in the middle of the group now, the Turkish former track star. Quemoy is the man that knows this course. Although it's a brand new course, the basics of it are the same. It's just the start and finish point on the loop that have been changed, so he knows his way around as defending champion. This is the far side of the hippodrome, the race course. And a first mention for Isaac Kipkemboy 2 on his debut, because we have not seen daylight at any point in the men's pack, and it's there. No drink station that's caused that. Possibly a little bit of a surge from the pacemaker as he nears the end of his shift, but the only taker is 2. And that is the famous San Siro Stadium. Giuseppe Miazza was a footballer between the wars who played for both teams, named in his honour. Very unusual for 2 major teams to play at the same ground. They alternate their time there. I visited it last time I was in Milan for a Inter home game. Incredible atmosphere, the ultras, the chanting, not quite like any other national football experience. The San Siro, that's the last chance they'll see of that as they make their way. Now, are we reforming behind 2, or will this test one of those who were, one or two of those that were hanging on at the halfway point? Just at the right-hand side of the shot, we can see that Segui, on the other side of the hippodrome in the women's race, is now perhaps 20 seconds clear, or thereabouts. This is coming up to the halfway, so all of this that she's inflicted on the women's field has been done in the first half of the race. She's got to do it all over again on the return run, and she is going for a time at the moment that is 6 minutes quicker than she's ever run before. Looks pretty good at the moment. Pacemaker will stay there for as long as he possibly can. He's frowning a little bit. The guy on the right, whose number or name we don't have, has been with them more or less from the start as well. It's reformed at the front. It just never happens that you have a 7-man sprint finish in the closing stage of a marathon, so there will be breaks and surges and people going for it, especially when the pacemaker steps aside. His head's rolling a little bit. the pacemaker. I wonder if he's almost done. Looking at his watch, 70 minutes is a good shift beyond anything his contract may have said. Usually halfway, if further if possible. Trying to look back and see what the gap is over the chasing women for this runaway lead at the moment. Fantushugi Galasa. No major road race wins. Getting quicker. Look, we're down to 2:21.10. Oh, he's stepping off. So he must have been part of the pacemaking with that high bib number. Fair play to him. Steps off. So we have just the one pacemaker and the one athlete in the elite women's field to look at and to think about and just see if she can hold on to this very bold first half of the race. Got to do it all over again on the way back. Fantastic pacemaking. Look at that. No kilometre more than 3 seconds quicker than any other. That's why they earn some bucks, the pacemakers, especially with the responsibility of taking the female champions to their finish lines. The judgment required is fantastic. It's a new skill, a new discipline. And you've got to do it throughout the race. There's no use having one quick or one really slow kilometre. Don't know that he will have a lead car with a timing truck on it. There may only be the one covering the men, so it is his own watch and the fixed clocks around the course that he'll have to have a look at. Oh yes, and talking of inclusivity, this is the Archer Planet dog run. So for those that fancy a bit of canine running, yeah, every dog has his day, and in Milan it's today. Fantastic. So there are events within an event at this festival of running, and the dogs, imagine the noise down there. There will be dogs that will be triggered by other dogs. So off they go on a short leash, only one runner per dog, only one dog per runner. I don't think it's 5 kilometres. I think it's a shorter route of something like 3 kilometres that the dogs do. But it's like something out of Disney, isn't it? And not all of them rushing, but all of them with a bib on. So it's a real task of concentration now on the left-hand side of the shot as we look at it on screen, as the dog takes a well-earned bowl of water at the end, because she's followed the pacemaker, and it's a 26-second gap, and a huge gap. Look at that, back to third and fourth, over a minute. They're still running pretty quickly. They're still running 2:23, 2:24 pace. So she's got to hold this together, otherwise they will close that gap in the manner of a cycling peloton. She's committed to a time 2 kilometres quicker than she's ever covered the marathon distance, and at the moment it's holding, but this will find out things that she perhaps never knew about her own running. Meanwhile, the pacemaker into overtime. Osbelen drifting back in that group. The group's still intact. Kipkoskei looks like he's come through his bad patch. Quemoy, the defending champion, paying close attention to the pacemaker. Maybe that will herald a move from him. And the tall number 2 seed on the right-hand side, Betaya, on his debut. Racing further than he's ever raced before. Some of those little reflex looks at their wristwatches are just nerves and anxiety, because they're not giving themselves time to look at the digits or assimilate what that means. It's just almost like a nervous reaction to what's going on. Everybody with their mouths wide open, breathing hard, taking in the oxygen. Great shots, these. How much further is he going to go, the pacemaker? Head's rolling a little bit, looks round to see, well, they're all still depending on him. Nobody wants anything other than what he's been offering for the last few kilometres, but is he nearing the end of his shift? They won't all be feeling the same. One or two of them will be thinking, do I go now? 25 kilometres down, 17 kilometres to go. I can do that. I could manage that. Big cash prize, big win. Never had a big win. Others are thinking, oh my God, I feel terrible. I'm hanging on here. Well, it's drifted out towards closer to 2:08. Tuitoic on his debut is at the back of that group. Looks like he's labouring a little bit. Fourth quarter of the race will really find out the debutants. Osbilen, 7 at the back as well again, for his drink. Gives himself room to find a drink, but it means he's got to accelerate again to close the gap back to the leaders. Did he get his drink? Yes, he's got it there, the orange bottle in his right hand. So once again, the drink station breaks up the pack. Without any change of pace from the pacemaker, we've got 4 or 5 seconds between first and last. And it does look to me like Tuitoic is the one that's really struggling in that group. Almost trod on his own drinks bottle there as he discarded it. So he is pretty weary. Quemoy now. Pacemaker has gone. Stepped off at that drink station, and the defending champion hits the front. So takes advantage of that natural gapping that occurred at the drink station to just hit the front for the first time in the race. That's the pacemaker at the back. He may not be going the full distance, may just be looking now for somewhere to step off or just cruise his way to the finish line. Tuitoic looks to be in real trouble, number 3. But Quemoy, the winner here a year ago in that 2:07.14, has accelerated to close to 2:07 pace again. That slightly asymmetric arm action, slightly forward lean, a little bit of backlift there, and they'll be seeing all of that backlift behind him and worrying, because this is not a fake lead, this is the defending champion. Is he going all the way for home, or is he just putting in a testing surge to see how many of the group he can drop? Either way, it's had its impact on this race, because we're down to single file. Yeah, there's the roll of honour. No defending champions. Never happened in the 22 editions of this race. Quemoy, the history man, looking to achieve exactly that. And it's number 1 and number 2 in the top 2 positions. This is Beata on his debut. Somebody knew that he was in good form and capable of winning the race. Quemoy for Uganda, Beata for Ethiopia, and here is Segui for Ethiopia, coming up to 80 minutes. The pacemaker will surely be in shot on the right hand side. There he is, doing a wonderful job. Isaac Quemoy, different nationality, but at the moment taking Segui to the biggest win of her career. But some way to go. Still over an hour's running left. Looking smooth, but the marathon can do very strange things to you in the second half. That hand signal from the pacemaker just indicating the right hand sweep coming up. She does run very, very close to him, gets the full benefit of the draft, the windshield, but he's got feet just going back quite close to where her knees are. Being told that it's fine, the pace is good. Last time we checked it was 2:21, so it's more than good, it's excellent. I wonder if she has some splits written on her arm there. Well, he's been reeled in, so it was just a tester from Quemoy. hasn't actually got rid of anybody, and they're back with him. So was that the plan, or has he got a few more surges in the locker that he can apply? 14 is Bareka Tolosa Giletto on his debut for Ethiopia at the back of the group, absolutely hanging on by his shoelaces at the moment to that leading group, because the chasing group are 3 minutes behind. So it's going to be a long and lonely run for him if he's to finish without reconnecting with that group. So two utterly different races, still 8 men in contention in the men's race, and we have a runaway leader in the women's. And the men's has been so even-paced. So that surge by Quemoy will have caught them by surprise, because it's really the only notable kilometre they've had in the whole of the race. Kipkoskai in the red and black there has had his good and bad spells in this race, but there's no remarks column in the results sheet. Could still win this, could still win the whole thing, even though he looked like he's been in the ejector seat and out the back of this group on more than one occasion. You see, sweating up. That's why they're so desperate to take the drinks on board. It's part of the energy process, but also the hydration process. Just dissipating the heat. Haven't seen any sponges taken on board, but you can see why the shoulders and the thighs are one of the major areas where they can get rid of heat. Big surface areas there. Osbilen taking the road less travelled on the right hand side. This is Tahir in the women's event. She's a very distant second place, or at least she was, and she's got no company. So whatever she does in the race now, whether she can consolidate and hold on to second, we're looking behind for, yeah, and so she looking to see where the chasers are. I think she may have relinquished the possibility of first place, but she wants to be on the podium, and it's lonely for her now. Four is a Kalnu at the back of that group in the pink singlets. One of the few that's already run under 2:07, the speed they're running at now. None of them can afford to have a bad patch. They've got to stay locked into that group to have any chance of making podium, making prize money, and getting the win. Wonder what's going through Quemoy's mind there. That was a significant lead that he took on. Have we got another one coming now? Is he off again? It's a very uneconomical way of running the race, but it is hurting him, but hurting the others maybe a little bit more. Let's see. He's leading. Is he surging? 10 on the outside. Kipkoskai. Saw the arrow, Kipkoskai, so knew that they were going to have to get over to the right-hand side, so did it early. There's only 40-odd minutes of running left in this race. Still a huge group in contention. I don't think I've seen, in the years that I've been working on this race, so many together this deep into the race. There's no pacemakers. They're all aiming to go the full distance. The defending champions in there, either side of him, are making their debut at the full marathon distance. So a wide range of thought processes about risk-taking and conservation of energy, but Quemoy looks restless. He's looking back, he keeps looking back just to see what impact it's having, and the likely effect is not that he will drop people that are on his shoulder, but that people will go out of the back of that group, and that at the moment is what's in danger of happening to Ekalnu of Ethiopia, number 4. He's a 2:06 man, so he's previously been able to hang with this pace, but he's finding this very much not to his liking. A quite low bunched arm action at the shoulders. But the cadence still fluid, still moving well, but it's just going away from him right now. Got to hang on in there. A drink may be the answer. How's the grab? Gets it, but loses maybe a second in doing so. That's a calculation. Quemoy doesn't go for a drink. Those are just the generic drinks provided. They're not in the special plastic bottles that the athletes have prepared for themselves. Those have ribbons and flags and flowers on them to enable them to be identified and grabbed at key points on the race. So it's whittling down. Quemoy leading and looking comfortable. The others hanging on, not all looking quite as comfortable. Is it 7 we're down to? It looks like it. Kalnu, it's a tantalising gap. If he could close it, he would. It's barely a couple of seconds. He must hope that there are a couple of irregular little kilometres that enable him to get back on terms, because how frustrating is that? There's the group, he wants a ride, he can't get his ride. And he's trying for all he's worth. Looking at his watch, it's not about the watch now. It's about closing that gap and reconnecting with the group. It's like cycling, it's easier to run in a group. Other people are doing the work, but he just can't get back on terms. And this is why Quemoy is just pushing and pushing in front. Meanwhile, in the quite different women's race, it slowed very slightly. For the first time, we've drifted outside 2:22 as a predicted finishing time. She's only got to hold that for 10 more miles, another 17 kilometres. But as the frame freezes there, you can see just a little bit of tension around her gaze. Is she starting to feel this a little bit? It'd be a surprise if she wasn't. So a long way still to go. It's just going to be these two. Up ahead, there's not much other than the elite men's second group, and that will be several minutes ahead. And ahead of them is this group going through 29 kilometres. 13 kilometres left. There's the roll call and the captions. Quemoy, almost since the pacemaker stepped off, has taken on the responsibility as defending champion for pushing on, but it hasn't got him clear yet. Raymond Kipchumba Chogi at the back of the group in the centre. So 1 for Turkey, 1 for Uganda, and the rest Kenya and Ethiopia. That's how elite marathon running around the world looks on days like these. But we have some very different experiences, from the defending champion to, I think, at least 2, possibly 3 in that leading group who are making their full marathon debuts, having not raced more than a half marathon before. Quite a pronounced forward lean, isn't it, from the defending champion, Quemoy? And have they slowed up to enable... Yes, he's back on terms at the back of the group, just looking at it. That gap for Kalnu, well, it's not quite closed, is it? He needs another second or so just to get back with it. So if they lose concentration in the lead group, or there's a slight variation at a turn or a drink station, that's enabling him to reignite his prospects in the race. Rumours of his demise are a bit premature. He's still there, Kalnu. Coming up to an hour and a half. They'll be able to see that on the lead clock up ahead. That's a psychological point in the race. 37 minutes of running to go. They rarely go for a training run that's less than 37 minutes, so the distance to go starts becoming more manageable proportions, but they won't often be feeling as fatigued as this with 37 minutes of a run to go. And Quemoy looks like he's pushing again. And he is. And at the back of the group, Akalnu will be cursing that because he just got back within touching distance, and it's on again, another surge. Drink station, that will disrupt as well. They all want their drinks. Nicely done by Quemoy. He had the clearest vision of his. Still not put it to his lips yet. And that's because he's almost like blasting away here. Look how that's gone from 2 or 3 across the road to single file. Quemoy going again. Pace not really moving away from 207, but he could hardly take that turn. Still hasn't really taken on board the fluid. There it is. Just a quick sip. Here's a man on a mission. Look at the backlift there, like an 800-meter runner. Incredible move by the defending champion here. Wow. Minimal arm action, big backlift. That was at 30 kilometers, but it doesn't tell the gaps that have opened up in the last couple of 100 meters. This is a man going for home. There can be no turning back now for Quemoy. Let's have a look, see what the gap is. I think it's more than 3 seconds. Took his drink early, held on to it and kicked, then took a sip, and he may have won the race at that turn, because this is incredible running. Arms almost tied together with little circles around his chest. Big forward lean, big kick back. And look what he's done to the rest of the race. It's a 3:01 pace, probably quicker than that now. Probably moved to a 2:50 something last kilometre. Not gone completely though, but the field is significantly whittled down with just over 30 minutes of running to go, 35 minutes or so. And Kipchoge working hard to get back on terms. So too Kipchunga, and too the debutant. Must be wondering whether all marathons are like this, with a sudden 400-meter sprint injected at the 90-minute point. Well, further back down the road, Akalnu just thought he got back on terms, and look what's happened to him. He's at the back of that conga, the dance that is being led by Quemoy, single file down the cones. Kipchoge just coming alongside to say, you didn't get rid of me, mate, I'm back. 4 men now regrouping. Will it slow down to enable those behind to get back on terms? Quemoy kicked and kicked, and it hasn't won him the race yet. So I think we have 1 Ugandan and 3 Kenyans. A lot of them train together in the same training groups around the Rift Valley. So the border and the groupings on the border between Uganda and Kenya means that they're often similar tribes, similar training groups, similar geography, but different nationalities. He's going again, is he, Quemoy? Unbelievable way to run a marathon. It's the least efficient way of racing, but he is going again. You can see they're having to respond. This isn't even paced running. My goodness me. It's like a 5,000 meter race where every time he comes round to complete a lap, he surges down the back straight. We're sticking with this. We haven't checked in on the women's race for a little while. That was a very different set of circumstances. Welcome along if you're just joining us. This is Jeff Whiteman with coverage of the 2024 Wizz Air Milan Marathon. We are now checking in with the women's race, where Segui taking on board the water, squirting a lot of it out just to get the right air pressure, I guess, for her. But she's been behind that lone male pacemaker for the whole race. I think she could be over a minute clear in the women's field at the moment. You'll get a projection. She was heading for somewhere around 2:21. May have drifted just a little bit. The pacemaker now running for her, not necessarily for the clock. So there's no point him keeping to 2:21 flat if that means she can't go with it. We've never had a defence in the women's race either, but Segui has never won a major marathon, and she's running this one a mile better than she's run any previous one. Looks like she's working a bit hard now though, perhaps starting to feel the strain. Nothing behind her. I don't think she'll be able to see anything up ahead. That secondary men's group is 8, 9, 10 minutes down the road, maybe more. I think she's feeling this a bit now, frowning a bit. She's got to hold it together for another 44 minutes or so. That men's grouping, those that are leading 4 in shot, 2 on the right hand side on his debut. Defending champion Quemoy. Is this another search from him again? 32 kilometres to run, 10 kilometres to go. Quemoy just absolutely full of running at the moment, the Ugandan. That backlift that almost comes up to the hip of the runner behind him, Kipchumba. Significant gaps now behind the leading 5. So you'd suspect our winner is coming from the group we can see here. Still 10 kilometres to run, a lot can happen, but Quemoy kicking on again. Raymond Choge Kipchumba, the athlete in second place, a 2:08 man, so operating inside his personal best, and that's a 1 hour, 1 minute 47, a huge gap. Back to the new second place there, Memuye, so it does mean that the long-term second placer, Tahir, has now been reeled in the women's race. 1:47, a big gap to close, just depends on whether Segui is fading a little bit. The chicanes through the city life parks, very much to Quemoy's liking. He'll remember this from last year, and remember perhaps that he got a bit of a surge going here. This is the Parco del Portello, part of the former Alfa Romeo plant. So a nice ornamental park. He won't trouble to look back, I don't suspect here, but if he does, you'll see that he's done it again this time, and this is as big a gap as we've seen. The top 5 still in the same shot there, though. Less than 30 minutes of running remaining. Quemoy of Uganda, the defending champion, heading for home. He's put in a number of testing surges. On each occasion, he's taken his foot off the pedal. It's enabled some of the chasing group to regroup behind him, but this doesn't look like that kind of surge. This looks like a long run for home from the only man in the group who knows what it's like to win a Milan Marathon. Quemoy running well. Extraordinary route here with hedges on one side, bank grass on the other. The spectators looking down on the runners from the embankments. A few little undulations, a few little man-made slopes within this section of the former Alfa Romeo plant. and over the carriageway. And he really is going away here. Those two behind really need to work hard together to close the gap. So some nice open modern concourses coming up. This piazza, this section of it wasn't taken in on the outward journey, and you can see further back, this is Tolosa of Ethiopia on his debut, visibly running much slower now. So I think they hung on for as long as they could, and now it's about still getting a decent time, still maybe getting on the podium. Another drinks bottle with the air being squirted out by Segui, 2:22, so she is slowing a little bit, and it's only 1:47, back to the new second placer. So second place on the up, and the leader just slowing down a little bit, struggling to keep on terms. It was a pretty good section of between 25 and 30 kilometers, 3:22, but the projected finishing time has slowed slightly, and it's a new second placer. Now we're back on the contraflow. Nice wall of noise for Quemoy, the defending champion. Lifetime best was set in winning this event next year. Not sure, although he has accelerated, whether that's going to be feasible this year. He's going away and he is running well, so you never know. That's where they are on the graphic on the right-hand side. Some nice straight sections coming up. They're always good if you're running well. If you're running badly, you don't want to see the next kilometre of running looming up ahead of you, but he is going especially well at the moment. And this section, common to last year, it's only the positioning of the start-finish on the loop that has moved round. The whole course has more or less shunted round by a kilometre and a half. From the Corso Venezia to the Piazza del Duomo. Isn't that great? The citizen runners, there's the pacing group with the balloons giving him a cheer as they pass on the contraflow. He moves out to a part of the course that they won't probably see now for another hour or two. It's not over yet though. Looking back at these chasers, they have not given this up. Quemoy's done this 2 or 3 times now, surged and then allowed them to get back on terms. Let's just see what that gap is. They're not working together. I think it's less than 10 seconds still. Just 4 or 5 seconds there between second and third. Yeah, on the head-on, that can foreshorten. We're looking at scenes from earlier in the week. Been a whole festival of running, events, exhibitions, kids races, lectures, great gathering of the clans. The fastest marathon in Italy, spread over a 3 or 4 day festival. So we're looking on the left-hand side of the shot as to whether that is a decisive lead, and I'm not sure it is yet for Quemoy. He's done this 2 or 3 times. It's less than 10 seconds. Stefano Baldini, the Olympic champion, 20 years on from his triumph in Athens 2004, was one of the guest speakers and VIPs at the running festival that started on Thursday, I think it was, this week. Kip Koskei is a man on a mission in second place. You can see that personal best was set in Vienna last year. He has won some of the lesser marathons in the past. So 2:07 is still within his comfort zone, and he hasn't let Quemoy go here. He's kept the elastic to within a 10-second margin, and you can see with his wonderful behind his shoulder shots just what lies ahead of him. 7 kilometers to run. Quemoy hasn't used all of his ammunition yet, I'm sure, but he hasn't won the race yet either. He will have to be able to surge again if he's to take the title, because he's got rid of all bar 2 of the chasers. We're down to a low 2:07 though, so he has fired off a few rounds there in the previous kilometers, but that's what it's done. You can see leading 5, leading 6 as they come round the corner are still all within a 200-meter section. Nobody running in a pair, everybody having to do it solo, but somebody among the chasers could be feeling pretty good and thinking, yep, I could still win this, I could still have the biggest win of my career, a major city title and a big cash payday. So who's got it over these last few kilometers of the men's race? Segui has led almost every meter of the women's race. Pacemaker just ahead of her, 1:46, so they're not closing. It's only by 1 second that Mamouye, the new second placer, has gained on her. She may not even know that information. She certainly will not be able to see her, so it would need a bit of a collapse from Segui for her not to win the title here in Milan for 2024. But this is far from over in the men's race. Very different race. We had a group of more than 10 well beyond the halfway point. The surges have all come from Quemoy, and he's got rid of almost everybody, but not quite. Yeah, 2:55 the average kilometre for the previous 5k segment. So he has thrown a lot at it. It might have won him the title, but that's not clear now. He's not looking over his shoulder, he daren't. He will know from the ripples of applause from the sidewalks that there are athletes behind. There's a drink station coming up. That's what the indicator board suggests on the left. He gets his. Is the chaser bothering? Yes, he is. His was the last bottle. Had to take it. It's a very marginal decision as to whether any carbohydrate benefit in the last 7 kilometers can be absorbed in time. Certainly within the last 3 kilometers, you wouldn't absorb it. The sponge etiquette, the areas to sponge, head, shoulders and thighs have a large surface areas which help you dissipate heat. He's just gone for the forehead with that sponge that he took, but not looking as comfortable as he was now, is he, Quemoy? Takes that energy gel, high concentrate carbohydrate gel, easily and quickly absorbed, and counting that gap at around about 6 seconds. So tantalizing but not decisive. Kip Koskay could still be the champion, and I think the leader knows it. Not too much sign of him looking back. Kip Koskay won the Buriram Marathon in Thailand. Won it in January last year. It was 5th in January this year. 7th in Linz in Austria. 3rd in Vienna in 2023. So well raced, 2 marathons a year. Usually good for top 7. 1 win. Is he going to get another win, or is it going to be a 2nd place, or is he going to be caught by those behind as well? Moving very sweetly. Quemoy not fading, but just not looking as good as he did when he put those surges in. This is going to be fascinating. Kip Koskay, relatively young man, born November 98. So that 7, I think, was a barrier that applied, or a signpost that applied on the outbound journey. And that, well, it could be 7 kilometers to go. Is that gap coming down slightly? It looks as though it is. It was 6 seconds, now down to 4. So Kip Kosgei on the charge. Titus Kimutai, Kip Kosgei on the charge. Probably safe in the women's race, coming back through the old Alfa Romeo works, is the woman that has led the entirety of this race, Fantashugi Galata. Galata Fantashugi. Shugi is what it says on her bib. From Ethiopia, she has a lead of 1 minute and 3/4 over the chasers. Kwemoy has a lead of just 4 seconds in defence of his title. And barely 5 kilometres to run. Looking a little bit more comfortable again now. If he looks back, it will betray anxiety to the chaser. So he's keeping his glaze fixed ahead, but he will know, he will be able to hear the footsteps of his countryman, Titus Kimutai, Kip Kosgei behind him. The pace hasn't slowed. He put in some irregular surges in the previous 5 kilometre segment, but nobody in the medal positions has faded. Well, there's the top 3. Just looking through the trees for the gap back to 4th, 5th and 6th. Our winner is going to come from amongst these 3. Kip Kosgei is the hunter, not the hunted. And in a moment they are going to be level. Will he tuck in behind him? Will he run shoulder to shoulder? Or will he psychologically try and attack him by going by without even pausing? Yes, there's the first look back from Kwemoy. Oh dear. I'm calling him his countryman. Correction there, it's Uganda, of course, for Kwemoy, the 2023 champion. Kip Kosgei tucks in behind. And it's not very far at all to go now. They are back inside the central part of the city. 5 kilometres to run, so the boards are counting down. Shugi in the women's race has a much more comfortable buffer to deal with. More than 90 seconds clear in the women's. The men have got barely 14 minutes of running remaining. Interesting that Kip Kosgei did not make any attempt to overtake. Just drew back alongside Kwemoy of Uganda to let him know he was there. But Kwemoy has reacted a little bit. This is 3rd place, I think we're looking back at. Kipchumba. .208 man, so if he can hold it together here, big payday and the possibility of a personal best as well. Back pass for Zeko Castle, which we saw on the way out, one of the largest castles in Europe. So we're not quite in lockstep with 4 kilometres to go, 4.2 kilometres to go. It's not a huge gap back to Choge Kipchumba. 7 seconds. 7 seconds is the gap. He looks a little bit more flat-footed, but he could still feature in the closing stages of this race. Here he comes round the corner in the background there now. Kipchumba in third place. Kwemoy and Kipkosgei for Uganda and Kenya, 1 and 2. You feel like if there was another big surge put in now, oh, he's gone for a drinks bottle. Well, that's surprising. That belies how he's feeling. Is he going to offer it to his teammate, to his co-leader? Well, he did that pretty neatly in the end. I thought Kwemoy, when he went for that drink, was going to disrupt his own rhythm and lose a vital second. He hasn't lost anything. He's got on board some vital fluids. And coming up to 2 hours for Segui, she'll be very pleased to get through that barrier. You can see now, keeps looking at her watch. It won't make it go any faster. She put an awful lot into the first half of this race. The effect has been to take her, well, 600 or 700 meters clear, maybe more, of the chasing group. But on some of the long straights, they might be able to see her. They might have taken heart from that. See, all a little bit more anxious than it was. She's way inside any marathon that she's ever run before. Little look back from Kwemoy there. Interesting. Is he settling for second? Has this little surge from Kipkosgei been a surge too much for the defending champion? This hasn't happened at any point in the race. Kipkosgei has had at different points good and bad phases, but he's decided now that he feels good enough to push on. And we're coming up to the 2 hour point in a 2:07 predicted finishing time. And Titus Kimitai Kipkosgei is the leader, and he's looking good. And I'm not sure the response from Kwemoy, the defending champion from Uganda, is there. He's struggling. For the first time in the race, Kwemoy is in real difficulty. 3 kilometers left to run. Kwemoy has to get himself back on terms now if he's to become the first man ever to retain a Milan Marathon title, and it's not happening at the moment. Further back down the road in the women's, Segui, pacemaker, I think, is having to nurse her through this. Just drop back and accompany her. They do have their own lead vehicle up front. She's looking at her own watch, but there is a clock on that car up ahead. So the women do have their own lead truck, so she'll have been able to check that time throughout the race. And I think she's in a bit of difficulty. Not as much difficulty as Kwemoy is in now, because his title is slipping away. Kipkosgei, eyes blazing, look at it. Is he heading for the biggest win of his entire career? At one point, it looked like he and Osbilen were doomed in that leading group. They were loitering at the back. It looked as though they were getting dropped. He's come through that to be our leader as we approach the 2 hour point. If you're just joining us, this is Jeff Whiteman with the commentary for the Wizz Air Milan Marathon of 2024, the 23rd edition of this race. And we're looking at the defending champion struggling to hang on to his title, being headed now by Kipkosgei of Kenya. Back into the cobbled streets of the capital. The marathon relay, 8,000 in the full marathon. It's a booming event. He is going for his drinks bottle with only 7 minutes to run. There was nothing there on his table, which was the last one with bib number 10. These are the discarded cups from the outbound journey of the race. So he's been out and back, and now we're into 2 hours in and just 7 minutes of running left. Titus Kimutai Kipkoskai, winner of the Buriram Marathon in Thailand. That's his biggest win to date. And if he can hang on to this, he is going to surpass that. Flying in the Wizz Air sponsored events. 2.2 kilometers to go. Almost nothing in distance running terms, but he's doing it on tired legs, but the adrenaline will be pumping. Still on a low 2:07 time, and he's away. There's Quemoy. Often on a head-on camera shot it foreshortens. That looks like it's well over 10 seconds now. It's an Olympic qualifying mark, but he's not in the 6 that have been shortlisted by the Kenyan Federation for the Paris Olympic Games. This is just for the win, and the big win for Kipkoskai. Let's see what the gap is. Well, no, that's a chicane. Not going to be able to tell there. Let's see when Quemoy comes round this turn. Is it more than 10 seconds? Well, it looks like a lot more than 10 seconds now. Kipkoskai going away. 5.5 minutes of running between him and the biggest win, the biggest payday of his career. And many have tried to defend a Milan Marathon title. The etiquette is often in major marathons that the defending champion gets invited back. But Quemoy looks like he may make a long list of people that haven't been able to win 2 in a row. It's very, very hard. And in fact, he's getting caught for second place. This is Raymond Kipchumba closing in on the defending champion. So Quemoy has hit the wall a bit here in these closing stages. If he can react, I'm sure he will. So you're getting different names on graphics. The full name is Titus Kimutai Kipkoskai, our event leader through Via Sonato. His bib will say something. His friends may call him one of his other names. Nice straight boulevard here. Now this is a decisive moment in the race. Quemoy trying to hang on. He is hanging on. That's the gap up ahead to the leader, around about 15 seconds. Number 15, Raymond Kipchumba Chogi, the 2:08 man, who's running just inside 2:08 by about 30 seconds. So on for a lifetime best. Thought he was going to come past, and Quemoy has had other ideas. He has not hit the wall. He has still got a change of pace. This could come down to a sprint finish between these two. 4 minutes left in the race, in the men's race, for the Wizz Air Milano Marathon title. Kipkoskai through 41 kilometers in a 42.2 kilometer race. The bounce is still there for him, and that's why, because he's still on 3:01 per kilometer. Incredibly even pace, really, throughout the race. No more than 6 seconds between his fastest kilometer and his slowest kilometer. 8 seconds actually. But that is wonderful running, and the reward may be the biggest win of his life. These are the moments that he'll have dreamt about in training. The buffer of a 15-second margin, able to enjoy the final kilometre of a major marathon. A few more turns left. Piazza San Babila is one of the last turns of the race. We're coming up to 2:05. Lifetime best of 2:07.46 for him. And Quemoy has had to let go of second place. So it's Kipchumba, and this looks like a much wearier women's leader toiling now. Segui of Ethiopia. She's opened up a huge lead. She may need all of that cushion. So less than 2 minutes of running now for Kipchoge of Kenya in the Wizz Air Milan Marathon. The Dome is where he started. The Dome is where he will finish his adventure. And he looks comfortable. That hasn't always been the case in the race. He's had his share of bad spells. 500 meters only to run. So he's going to break his lifetime best by a margin. That looks like the 42-kilometer point, so he's got 200 meters to run from there. And he can really enjoy this, full of running. Came from a little way back to regain the lead in this race and then put in his own surge, and he has never relinquished it. It's been a wonderful piece of judgment and the biggest win of his career. Don't think he's quite going to break 2:07, but he is going to smash his personal best. And it looks as though he's in isolation, but it's only in the last 4 kilometers that he's got a way to take this victory. Now he can enjoy it as the finish line approaches. It's going to be just outside 2:07, but the champion for Kenya is Titus Kimutai Kipchoge. Fantastic win for him, and 30 seconds off his lifetime best. Raymond Kipchumba is going to take second. He's come from a way back to take this second. A 1-2 for Kenya. And just in the background, we can see the defending champion from Uganda, Andrew Rotich Kwemoy, who at one point looked like he was absolutely unbeatable. But he got reeled in after putting in 2 or 3 testing surges, and he takes 3rd place for Uganda. Gave it everything he had, and an excellent time. In fact, I think not too far outside his own lifetime best in 3rd place. Looks like Beata on his debut just crossed the line, so good running for him for Ethiopia. Still under 2:09 for finishers that are through now. Look at that for a backdrop, 3,000 spiles in the Duomo. Wonderful place to start and finish a marathon. Osbilen, oh, how frustrating for him. You can see he's gone to his knees there, the Turk, because it's a lifetime best, but he's 30 seconds outside the Olympic qualifying mark. I'm sure that's what he came for. So desperately disappointing for him. 2:08.10 is the Olympic qualifier, and in the end, I think there were only 3 runners that were inside that. So Osbilen gave everything to try and be on the start line for the Paris Olympic Games, but unfortunately, he missed out by a matter of seconds there. So a buzzing atmosphere at the start-finish line here. Congratulations all round for the champion. Fascinating race because some of those surges looked as though they were decisive, but ultimately the marathon goes to those that run most economically and can just conserve enough for the crucial sections of the race. Kipkoskei is rehydrating. 2 on his debut for Kenya, was in the mix until quite late on. So he's coming in for a time that's going to be just outside 2:10. Our thoughts turn to the women's race and that lead that has been held for so long by Segui. But when we checked in with her last, it looked like she was labouring a little bit. And the women obviously operating around about 12 or 13 minutes back down the road from here. 2 showing how even the quickest can find the closing stages of a marathon hard. This is just outside 2:11 for him. So he will be very, very glad to cross that finish line. Celebrates completing his first ever marathon. This was the battle for South Africa, and it was won by Fihi Desmond Magobo. 2:09 is best, so he's outside that. And unfortunately, none of the South Africans will have achieved the Olympic qualifying mark either. Kibet for Kenya. There's another group of South Africans that were in what was the secondary group that was being pace made for 2:08. So it's been tough out there. We've had good quality. We're still only on 2 hours 12 minutes. Plenty of finishers already. There will be a presentation of awards while we're on air, so stay with us for that. We still have the women's podium to be determined, and I suspect those gaps that were 1:47 will be a bit less than that at the finish line. There's the leader. You can see the cadence has gone somewhat for Segui. She absolutely committed to a pace that was 6 minutes faster than she's ever run. It may still be enough. We haven't got a check-in. She's looking nervously over her shoulder. I don't think she can go any quicker than this. They'll be isolated behind her. We're looking at the big moment, the win for Kipkoskei. Enjoying it. Great crowds in front of the Duomo on what looks like the first day of summer, doesn't it, here in Milan. Brilliant win for Kipkoskei of Kenya, and a lifetime best. You can't get a better day as a full-time marathon runner than winning a major city marathon and breaking your all-time personal record. Kipchumba got up for silver, having come from a long, long way back. So Kenya 1 and 2. Kwemoi for Uganda in 3rd. That will be the podium that will be presented shortly. Very despondent Kwemoi. I think at different stages of the race he must have thought it was his. We're back with Segui. Jalata Fantu Segui of Ethiopia. Lifetime best 2:29.20. Still well inside that. But the pacemaker is having to, I think, drop back and just help her, nurse her along to the finish, because I don't think she's going to run quicker in the second half than she did in that lavish first half, which got rid of the entire field. Dropping her arms, looking over her shoulder, looking at her watch. The finish line can't come soon enough. But she's got still maybe 10 minutes of running. What's back down the road? Oh my goodness. She is being reeled in. It's happened. So having been ahead for all that time, Memuye is her worst nightmare. She's closed down almost 2 minutes to go into the lead in the closing stages. A 2:24 runner. She's perhaps distributed her effort a little more evenly, and that is breaking the heart of the long-term leader, Segui of Ethiopia. Now she's got to concentrate in these last 3 kilometers in holding on to a podium position. So that's a big lead. She really has hit the wall there. Committed fully to a big personal best in the first half of the race, and now it's whether she can hang on to the podium. Memuye, by contrast, looks absolutely full of running. Prolific marathon runner. She's won in Parigi in France. She's won in Zhengzhou in China. This is going to be the biggest win of her career if she can hang on to the lead, but she certainly looks like she's running very strongly at the moment. 23 years of age. Last fastest run set in Switzerland, where she was runner-up in the Marathon de Geneva in 2:24:23. So our men's winner set a personal best, and our women's winner could, if it's her, smash her lifetime best as well. Interesting to see what's going on behind in the women's event, because that has been a topsy-turvy race. And you'll see from the gaps that they've had to do it largely on their own. 38 here is Isaac Kemai, who was previously pacemaking Segui, and has probably had to quicken his pace a little bit here as he takes on board Tigis Memuye of Ethiopia, the new leader. Well, she'll be feeling so joyful here. No looking back for her. She will have seen Segui for a few minutes beforehand, realised that she was reeling her in, been able to see that clock on top of the lead car for the women's, and realising that she was closing in on the lead of the Wizz Air Milan Marathon. And now she's probably feeling better than she has done all race. Not even bothering with the drink station, the pacemaker is. She's just running straight down the middle, or going over for regular water on the left-hand side. So not taking on board a personal drinks bottle. So we saw this in the men's. There's not many turns left in the race. It does twist and turn a little bit in the closing stages to the dome, right in the heart of ancient Milan. So I think she's safe in the lead, although we haven't had a look back for a little while. But the question will be whether Segui is safe in second place, and I'm not at all sure about that, because there are several runners that have come from a long way back on their own as we go into the final 2 kilometers with our new women's leader, Tigis Memuye, heading for 2:26. So it's not going to be a lifetime best for her. That will still be the Geneva time that she ran back in 2021 at 2:24:23. But this will be the biggest win of her life if she can hang on. Nice rangy running action. And she hasn't particularly quickened, as you can see. So the tale of the women's race is who slowed least. And unfortunately, Segui slowed a lot. And Memuye still holding together 3:47 per kilometre in what we now know are quite difficult sectors between 35 and 40 kilometres. It was where the men's race was won, and it is where the women's race is being won, but not by a huge acceleration, just by holding it together. Remember, we will have a presentation of awards, the podium for the top 3 in the men's and the women's race, but we don't know the women's podium yet. And it's probably, even now, out on the course, not what it will be at the finish line as we go through 2:20. This is Jeff Whiteman with coverage of the Wizz Air 2024 Milan Marathon, entering the very closing stages of the women's race. We had a dramatic men's race. That's where they are on the course, with just a few turns. Left, the largest church in Italy, if you don't include the Vatican. Work began in 1386. Final touches were put in place 600 years later in 1965. And today it's the finish line of the Wizz Air Milan Marathon, and it will be a glorious sight for this woman if she can hang on in the lead. Running strongly, Tigist Memuye of Ethiopia. Pacemaker in this women's field has had to do it all on his own. Isaac Kemei, just up ahead there in the orange singlet, had to adapt his pace as Segui slowed a lot, and has then had to pick it up again as the new leader Memuye draws alongside. So his role is to the winner of the race, the leader of the race, not to any individual athlete. So when the lead changes, he changes with it. And he probably will step aside in the closing stages to let her have all the glory of the run-in. But he will run all 41, 42 kilometres, maybe just the last 100 metres or so that he'll yield. But he's done a wonderful job. Coming up to 2:22, 4 minutes of running left in the race for the Women's Championship, the women's title. So out on the course at the moment, there are 16,000 runners in the marathon relay. Still only had probably a few dozen finishers in the elite fields. We're still 2:22 in the race, which is a good time for the men and the women at national level. Corsa Venezia is the old start-finish area that they're going through now. So the whole course has been rotated by about a kilometre. Pacemaker getting instructions from the member of his management agency telling him keep it going, but then step aside in the finishing straight, so she gets all the photos and all the glory. But well done, mate, you did a good job pacing. Superb. If you were with us a few minutes ago, we know this section of the course, piazzas and squares, so a few turns to come. No problem if you're leading, a little bit more difficult if you're on tired legs or you've hit the wall, the glycogen depletion state that will affect a few of the mass runners as well as the elites. So just a couple of minutes of running left for the 23-year-old Tigist Memuye. She has won several marathons, not at this level, not quite at this level of prestige, but she knows how to judge it, and that has paid dividends for her today. It'll be fascinating to see what's gone on behind her, though, and in particular whether Segui, in the conditions she was in when we last saw her, has managed to hang on to a podium position, having been the runaway leader for most of the second half of the race. That must be so demoralising for her. Let's hope she can pick up something from the race. Remember, her lifetime best, Segui, is 2:29, so that's still possible, even at the speed she was moving when we last saw her. Just over a minute left in the race. Memuye taking the turns well. Pacemaker Isaac Kemei still helping, as he has done throughout this women's race. Done a great job. So you can hear the live music, or the music at the finish line, projecting around these ancient cobbled streets. good numbers of spectators out on the perimeter rail to salute them in the final run-in. And Kemai, the pacemaker, finally steps aside to leave the glory to the women's champion. The final two barriers for her, 42 kilometres and 42.2 kilometres, the full marathon distance. Nobody behind her, so she can finally enjoy these closing stages en route to the biggest win of her life. It's happened in both the men's and the women's events. It was a Kenyan men's champion in Titus Kipkoskei, and it is going to be an Ethiopian women's champion enjoying the biggest win of her entire life. A fantastic moment as she approaches the finish. So the Flutter-Fetti is out. No sign in the background of the second placed woman. We will be intrigued to see who that is in the next few minutes. But the win in the Wizz Air Milan Marathon in the women's event is going to go to Tigist Memuye of Ethiopia. She's our champion. And Jepchirchir has got up for second place. Sophie Jepchirchir of Kenya come through late to take second. And for her, that is a big personal best by 3.5 minutes. So congratulations to her, a little bit unsteady on her feet. So she too has caught and passed Segui, the long-term leader. So Ethiopia won, Kenya second. Oh, a little bit of discomfort. We're looking back to see who got. Looking in particular to see what happened to Segui. I don't think she's finished yet. Memuye 1 for Ethiopia, Sophie Jepchirchir 2 for Kenya, and we're awaiting sight of our third place woman as we get those wonderful aerial shots of Il Duomo, 3,000 spires incorporated within the architecture of that incredible church. And here she is, the long-term leader, Segui. Well, it looks as though she is going to be able to hold on. She's looking behind her desperately, but I'm glad she has something to show for those bold front-running efforts. Yeah, she's looking behind. She's seen two athletes come from 2 minutes back to take first and second, but Segui, who at one stage looked to be running away with this title, oh, those legs are so weary. I think even if she looks back and sees somebody, there's nothing she can do. She has no more gears left on her bike. She's going to be just outside her lifetime best because her time is going to be the two times you can see in bottom right added together. So the winner's time was 2:26. You can add 3.5 to that. So Segui is not going to break her lifetime best of 2:29.20, but she's desperately hanging on. You can see this is what happens when you hit the wall in the marathon. The glycogen stores go, the body doesn't respond. She's coming in on autopilot, but she's given us one of the stories of the race. Giulietta Bantu Segui led the race for about 90% of the distance, and she hasn't won, but it looks as though she is going to be able to hang on one way and another to third place in our final podium position. My goodness, has a finish line ever been more welcome than that? You can stop now, you've done it. Oh, what a relief for her. Third place. Absolutely spent. I'm glad she got third. I mean, that was, it would be demoralising to have lost first and second places, but she has something to show for it. No personal best, no win, but she finished the distance, and it was very, very, very hard for her at the end there, as you could see. We will have the award ceremony. That's scheduled for around about 6 or 7 minutes from now. We're enjoying the closing stages of the women's race. This was our new champion, Tigist Memuye of Ethiopia, having her best moment of her life. So that winning feeling for Ethiopia, the men's title having gone to Kenya and Kipkosgei. This was second for Kenya, Jepchirchir. Some big gaps in the women's race. She'll have had a lonely run, but rewarded with the second of our podium positions. Sophie Jepchirchir of Kenya. And gritting her teeth to get third place. We saw it live a few minutes ago. Tigist Memuye, the long-term runaway leader, hit the wall, but held on for third place for Ethiopia. Just a glimpse there of Hannah Klein. Sarah Klein of Australia. Going to be outside her lifetime best of 2:30. But I think she is our fourth place finisher, unless we've missed some, with Bikila of Ethiopia just behind her in fifth. And Hamanot Alamayehu of Ethiopia next to finish. Still inside the top 10 female finishers in this wonderful setting, spectacular setting for a marathon finish. The Wizz Air Milan Marathon of 2024, the culmination of a marathon festival here in Milan. Well, you can see despondency for Klein there. From Australia, she'll have come here looking for that women's Olympic qualifying mark of 2:26. It wasn't to be today. In fact, there weren't too many achieved the qualifying mark. There were one or two Kenyan men, but they already outside the short list of 6 that Kenya has announced for its Olympic marathon team. They'll make their way over to the podium where we will have our presentation. And a win here attracts the attention of other autumn marathons, maybe some of the Abbott World Marathon Majors, for a chance to get quicker, to go against stronger opposition and have another glory day. But glory for the top 3 in both races as we look at the Duomo. These men that are finishing now are under 240, 240, 241 or thereabouts on their net time. That's decent running. There are They will be serious athletes that train every day, perhaps have run for national teams at different times, certainly capable of national medals. There's confirmation of the top 10. And it will have been disappointment in particular for Özbilen there in 6th place, because for Turkey, he definitely came for the Olympic qualifying mark and missed out. Quemoy could make the team for Uganda. That's the other Paris permutation within that men's graphic. So this is the podium presentation. Let's join it. I'm not sure who else will be in the frame for Ugandan selection for the Paris Olympic Marathon, but Quemoy is right on the deadline. There will be no marathon opportunities beyond the end of April, so the team is likely to be selected within the next 3 or 4 weeks or so.
Diamo ora la premiazione. Annalisa Areni, Head of Client Strategies, Unicredit. Il piatto per il terzo classificato in rappresentanza dell'Uganda, Andrew Rotich Quemoy.
These are amazing shots, aren't they? You can't tell who are marathon runners. Well, the ones walking quicker aren't the marathon runners. The marathon runners are the ones walking very tentatively across the square. So flanked by what appeared to be Wizz Air cabin crew, we move to our 2nd place, and this was Raymond Kipchumba of Kenya. Came through well.
I Wizz Air consegnano il voucher a Raymond Kipchumba Choge.
So he gets a Wizz Air voucher. That will get him places. Wizz Air have a hub in Milan, low-cost carrier that is based in Poland. So many of the 40% of the field that are taking part in today's race that are from outside Italy will have come via Wizz Air to Milan. And now the big moment for our champion, Titus Kimitai Kip Kosgei. He'll be next up on stage, winning in a lifetime best. You don't get many better days than that. Sometimes for marathon runners, when they've had a hard day, they hobble up onto the podium on stiff legs. Won't be surprised if our champion comes up next, bouncing. Here comes his big moment.
Ed ora, signore e signori, la proclamazione del vincitore. In rappresentanza del Kenya, con il tempo di 2 ore, 7 minuti e 12 secondi. Titus Kimitai Kipchumba.
And as predicted, with a bit of a swagger and a bit of bounce, Kip Kosgei comes on stage, the champion, and also in a lifetime best. And there weren't lots of personal bests in the first few. So a double whammy achieved for him, and the biggest win of his career, winning the Wizz Air Milan Marathon of 2024. Congratulations to him. Kenya 1, Kenya 2, Uganda 3. That's our men's podium. Confirmation of the margins there. those gaps between second and third do belie the closeness of the race, because all of that damage was only really done in the last 3 or 4 kilometers of the race. It was very, very close prior to that. So it looks as though Wizz Air have got a team in the corporate relay. Their VIP presenter, part of that podium party.
Ed ora, signore e signori, in onore del vincitore, l'inno nazionale del Kenya.
So we have the national anthem for the winner, Kipchoge for Kenya.
So
they take the plaudits. We still have our women's podium presentation to come. Finishers will be streaming across the line, both in the relay and the Wizz Air full marathon for the next few hours. But these are the creme de la creme, the champions in the men's division, with the women to come next. It was quite a logistical exercise because of the access and the size of the carriageway for this event to have moved to this new start and finish. But when you see these pictures, absolutely unstoppable. Look at that. Piazza del Duomo, the most wonderful location for a start and finish of any road race. And this was the winning moment for Kipchoge. Just a short while ago, you can see second and third place in the finishing straight behind him, so he couldn't afford to relax, but he was full of running in those closing kilometres to take his biggest race win. We'll see the women's podium very shortly. Sarah Klein did come right the way through the field for that 4th place. And Segui held on for 3rd place, but Memuye, the winner, in 2:26.32. There's the full podium. First Italian finisher there in 8th place. This is the women's podium. Gelata Pantu Segui, the long-term leader, feeling a bit better about things now, perhaps, than she did down the finishing straight. As well as that Wizz Air voucher, I think there'll be some prize money in addition to that, but she has something to show for everything she spent on that race, and she spent everything on that race. The leader, holds on for third place. Segui of Ethiopia. Well, second place also came from a long way back in the field, but she judged it well. For Kenya, in silver, it was Sophie Jepchirchir.
Cabin crew, Wizz Air. Orologio testina consegnato dalle mani di tutta Ologio ed Oxfam Service RCS.
You can see all of the sponsors and the supporting partners displayed on the gantries either side of the podium stage there. Of course, the city and the public body is 40% of a field of 8,000 coming from outside of Italy, big contingents from France, United Kingdom, Belgium, Ireland and Germany. A real destination sporting event, this one. But our champion with a very well judged race for Ethiopia was Tigist Memuye, with her biggest ever race win. Congratulations to her. Here she comes.
Vince la 22esima edizione della Wizz Air Milano Marathon, Decisive.
Tigist Memuye, the champion. I think she was feeling a bit poorly in the immediate aftermath of the race, but all smiles now. Men's champion was for Kenya. We will shortly be hearing the Ethiopian national anthem. In the women's race, Ethiopia 1, Kenya 2, Ethiopia 3.
Il trofeo per la vincitrice è consegnato da Jan Malin, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, Wizz Air.
So the national anthem for Tigist Memuye for Ethiopia.
Podio femminile, Decisive Memuye, Sophie Jepchirchir, Susi Invito le autorità premianti a partire
Confirmation of the women's result there. You can see that was a huge gap back to Segui. She really had to toil to hang on to that third place position, having been on schedule for 2:21 well into the second half of the race. It's been a day of perfect racing conditions. We've had some drama. We've had some big moments in the lifetime and careers of certain athletes. The finishers will be coming over the line for the next few hours, but we'll shortly be concluding our coverage of 2024 Wizz Air Milan Marathon. Almost doesn't look real, does it? The images of the dome, podium in the foreground there, and the finish line just over to the left-hand side as we look at the screen. Hope everybody that travelled far has got what they came for out of the marathon or the relay. Certainly the weather has played its part. It's been a great day of racing. It's our top two. They're happy. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope to see you again soon. From me, Jeff Whiteman, it's goodbye.